going on, APUSH peeps? We have Chapter 1 of Alan Brinkley's American History. We're using the 14th edition, although other editions will certainly match up as well. This one is titled The Collision of Cultures, and lots of info from this chapter will be in the new APUSH curriculum, so make sure you are familiar with this chapter. Also, for this video and every other Alan Brinkley video, make sure you check the description. I have topic videos that relate to this chapter, as well as the actual new curriculum broken down by key concept as it is in the curriculum. So make sure you check those out as well in the description below. So let's get started. All right, America before Columbus. We have some early migrations here, and many people came to the Americas via the Bering Strait, which connected Russia and Alaska. Some individuals also came via boats to Chile and Peru. And civilizations in the Americas, we saw lots of different civilizations, including the Incas, which are located in present-day Peru, and that was the largest empire in the Americas. The Mayans were located in Central America, and they developed a written system, a calendar, as you're familiar with if you remember December 21st, 2012 at all, when the world was supposed to end, and agricultural advancements as well were Mayan contributions. The Aztecs were located in present-day Mexico. We have Tenochtitlan, which was the largest city ever to that point. And in the southwestern United States, this was based on agriculture or maize. And this is a key idea from of the new AP curriculum, maize or corn. And they built elaborate irrigation systems. In the Great Plains, the center part of the United States here, and we'll come back to this when we talk about the Dust Bowl later on, this area here, there were lots of nomads living there, and they hunted buffalo. So a different type of living environment in the Great Plains than in the southwestern portion of the United States. In the northeastern, we see the Iroquois Native Americans, which were located over in New York and Pennsylvania area. They developed permanent villages, they hunted, they gathered, and they also used agriculture, which helped dominate society as well. Medi natives were very religious, and they associated religion with nature. So let's talk about tribal social roles. Well, women would raise the children, they would also prepare meals, and they would gather food. The men were responsible for hunting. They were mostly responsible for that. And in some societies, in the Iroquois, for example, women helped make tribal decisions via council. So women played a much larger role in society in Native American societies than they did in European societies when they would colonize the Americas, as we'll see. All right, so let's talk about reasons for exploration. Well, in Europe, we have a population growth. So there's lots more people living there, and they're looking to go to new areas where there's more land, because land in Europe was very expensive. We also have advances in technology, such as this guy. This is a sextant, which is basically a GPS system, which would help determine latitude and longitude. We also have a desire for new markets and products. So people wanted to make money by selling goods to new markets. As a result of Columbus's explorations, Spain increased interest in exploration, and they eventually surpassed Portugal, which was the naval powerhouse of that time. And Spain claimed most of the New World except for Brazil. That's why in Brazil today they speak Portuguese, whereas really the rest of Latin America speaks Spanish. The conquistadors were Spanish conquerors. The most famous is probably Cortez, who in 1518 devastated the natives, and really natives fell victim to disease, especially smallpox. They were not immune to European diseases. Many conquistadors justified this and saw this as God's work, saying that if God wanted them to survive, then they would have been immune to these diseases. And Spain built its empire on seeking gold and silver in the New World. And boy, did they ever find gold and silver. And the ordinances of discovery in the 1570s banned harsh military conquest, which kind of began to reverse this trend of conquistadors. Spain required Catholicism to be the only religion in their new territory, so they were very big on spreading religion and converting natives as well. And they would set up missions, and this was located in the southwestern part of the United States as well, especially present-day California, and they converted natives to Christianity. And many post-conquistador Spanish immigrants came to the Americas for the sole purpose, or the major purpose, of spreading religion. All right, let's talk about St. Augustine, Florida. This was the first permanent European settlement in the Americas. The encomienda system, I do have a video on this, and it's specifically mentioned in the new curriculum, so make sure you're familiar with it. This was where Spanish individuals were given land, and they could demand tribute and labor from natives. Now, This is essentially slavery for Native Americans, and in return, the Spanish were expected to convert and Christianize these Native Americans. In the 1680s, in the southwestern portion of the United States, we had the Pueblo Revolt. I have a video on this as well, which was a Native American rebellion against the Spanish in New Mexico. And here is where most of the Pueblos were living. So why did it occur? Well, we had 2,000 Spanish and 30,000 Pueblos. We see a discrepancy in the numbers there. And the Spanish priests and government, they tried to convert natives to Catholicism, and they would suppress or eliminate any Native American practices that went against or were inconsistent with Christianity. And the Spanish also demanded tribute and labor from the natives. Eventually, the natives are going to get upset. This is also called Pope's Rebellion, after the Native American leader Pope. So Pope rises up, has other individuals rise up, and they kill hundreds of Spaniards, and they force the Spanish to flee. And they flee for about a dozen years. And in 1696, Spain comes back and regains control. However, what we begin to see is that Spain sought to religiously assimilate the natives, or rather bring them in and accept some of these practices that they may not have been okay with before. So we see more of an accommodation from the Spanish after this. And the Pueblos were given more freedoms from the Spanish as a result of the Pueblo Revolt. Alright, by the end of the 1500s, the Spanish monarchy controlled virtually all local governments in its new world colonies. This will be a difference from the British colonies, which we'll see in Chapter 2. Spain was more strict than Britain in terms of imposing economic policies. For example, all trade must go through a few regulated ports controlled by Spain. Britain, France, and the Dutch focused on population growth and establishing permanent settlements, where the Spanish really didn't focus on population growth. Spain did not continue to send large numbers of immigrants. We have the Columbian Exchange, which was this exchange of goods and ideas, and diseases as well, from Europe and Africa to the Americas. And some examples of goods that were exchanged. Going from America to Europe and Africa, we have potatoes and maize. There's maize again, corn popping up, and tomatoes. From Europe to the Americas, we see wheat, rice, horses, chickens, and oxen. And horses are going to play a huge role in Native American life, especially those living on the Great Plains that can now travel farther and faster. So what's the impact of this? Well, in Europe and Asia, we have a massive population growth due to this new food that is able to sustain the larger population. And in Africa, unfortunately, we see Spanish and Portuguese who would use Africans from West Africa to be used as slaves in the Americas. And in the Americas, we see the spread of disease. Again, that's smallpox. We also see the creation of social classes such as Mestisos, who are individuals that are descendants of Europeans and Native Americans. We see the horse transforming native life because it makes hunting easier, and we also have the encomienda system as well. All right, the Spanish hierarchy, when we're talking about this, people from Spain in the Americas were at the top, and natives and Africans were at the bottom. In the middle emerges this large class called Mestizo, which I just mentioned, and here's a picture of a Mestizo baby. Again, it's somebody who has mixed native and European ancestry. African societies, both in Africa and those that carry over into the Americas, tended to be matrilineal, unlike Europeans. So what does that mean? Well, property was inherited from the mother's family, not the father. So there's more of importance on who the mother was in a family. Women played a very large role in trade, and slavery existed in Africa, but it was not usually hereditary like later in the U.S. In other words, if you were a slave and you had a child, your child was not automatically born a slave, like slaves later would be in the United States. The slave trade, which was dominated by Spain and Portugal early on, increased due to the demands for goods such as sugar and later tobacco, because this will require a lot of labor. And African tribes fought with one another and traded captured enemies to the Spanish and Portuguese to sell as slaves. All right, so let's talk about the English. They're going to arrive in the 1600s and really stand out. So let's talk about reasons for English exploration. Again, rising population and lack of land. It's going to be a major part for European countries. We have joint stock companies, which were when a group of people would come together and pool their money together, and they would share in the profits and losses. It's really like a stock market, like investing in the stock market today, and this was their version back then. Mercantilism was a huge idea during this time, and then the goal of mercantilism was to benefit the mother country. In this case, it was England. And this increased the desire for colonies to gain wealth. So the more colonies a country had, the more wealthy they likely would be. Religion was another reason that the English came over, especially Puritans. These were people who wanted to purify the Anglican Church of Catholic rituals. They did not want to separate or break away. They simply wanted to purify it. And they came to the Americas to seek refuge. Puritans believed in something called predestination, which was introduced by this guy, John Calvin. And that's the idea of when you are born, God has already determined whether you will be saved or not after your life. Separatists were extreme Puritans who wanted to break away from the Anglican Church. An example of separatists were Pilgrims. So that's why they came to the Americas as well. All right, English experiences in Ireland. This is important because it's going to shape the way the English treated Native Americans. The English viewed the Irish that were mostly Catholic as savages. Remember, England is a Protestant country. They believed that the Irish could not be assimilated and must be oppressed. The English would use the same ideas against the natives in the Americas, and they would view the natives as savages. The French and the Dutch, on the other hand, got along much better with the natives. Spain barely colonized North America, which left the French and the Dutch and the English to have North America for itself, most of it for itself. The French explored into the North American continent and developed close ties with natives, especially in the Ohio River Valley and in the interior of Canada. We have coureurs de bois, which were French fur traders, and the French developed an alliance with the Algonquin Indians, and they would intermarry with these Native Americans as well. And the Dutch also traded furs and were established around present-day New York, although they did have a smaller population. All right, the Spanish Armada. This will be a key turning point in world history. This was a large Spanish fleet that was defeated by the English. And you can actually see the route that the Spanish Armada took here. And they were eventually defeated by the English, which signified the emergence of England as a world naval power. English settlements in the colonies. The very first one was Roanoke, and this was known as the Lost Colony because after returning about a couple years later, the colony was gone. And in 1590, the colony was found deserted with the word Croatoan carved on the post. And historians really don't know what happened here. There's debates about whether or not the colonists fled, whether or not they died, whether they were massacred. Nobody really knows. And in Jamestown, which is established in 1607, this is the first English settlement, permanent settlement in the Americas. This was a charter by King James I. This would, again, become the first permanent English colony. All right, that's everything you need to know about Alan Brinkley's Chapter 1 for American History. If you guys have not already, I'm going to ask you please take a moment and subscribe to my channel. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button and also share this on Twitter and Facebook. Share this with anybody you think would benefit from it, teachers, friends, other classmates. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in this section below. If you want to download this PowerPoint, I have a link to it in the description as well as those other videos as well. Thank you guys very much for watching. I appreciate it. Good luck this year and have a good day.